So what actually is the best hand grinder for espresso? There's a lot that goes into answering that question, but for the longest time, the answer probably would have been this, the Espresso J Ultra. But in the last couple of years, depending on where you look especially, it has kind of seemed like the internet has sort of moved on from this grinder in some ways, and it's now eclipsed by other grinders like even the K Ultra from Espresso's own line. So you have to ask, why is that? This J Ultra was sent to me by the fine folks at Rogue Wave Coffee. And before we dig into all the ins and outs of this conversation, I think we should just make a cup of coffee with it. Hand grinders for espresso are basically like little pepper mills almost that you hold and you grind up your dose of espresso beans in them. The J Ultra has an external adjustment mechanism up here at the top that you use to set your grind setting, and you dump your beans in, put the handle back on, and start grinding. And despite what you may think, if you are used to electric coffee grinders, it is work, but it's not terribly difficult to grind up your shot of espresso. And when you're all done, you're going to be left with a little cupful of ground coffee in here. So I'm just going to take that and I'm going to use my Cafe Lot robot here. This is a manual espresso maker. I thought that was kind of fitting. I'm going to dump my coffee in here. Sometimes I find you can just get it distributed well enough with a little swirl, but if you need to, you can use a WDT tool to spread the grounds around evenly in there. Then we're going to give it a tamp, throw a little paper filter on there. You don't have to do that, but I like to do that. The robot metal filter. And then I'm going to fill this thing up with water and load it onto the bottom of the robot. You can use these hand grinders with electric espresso machines as well. I just really like this espresso machine and I thought it was fitting. So now I'm going to slowly pull down on the arms of the robot until I see even beating across the bottom of the basket. And then I'm going to slowly apply more pressure. The flow rate is going to go up. I like to go for a lower pressure shot based on somewhere around, 6 bar or something like that. All right, then when I'm all done, I'm going to take out my shot of espresso here. We're going to give this a stir. That's always a good idea. Let's see how this tastes. That is a delicious, very traditional style espresso shot. Thick body, a lot of blend in the flavors, very sweet caramel, lots of crema, delicious espresso shot. And the reason that the J Ultra does those types of espresso shots so well actually has to do with the burrs that are inside here, the actual parts that do the grinding up of the beans. And in the J, those parts create a lot of what's called fines. Fines you can think of kind of like these really tiny little dusty particles mixed in with your coffee grounds. And when produced in higher proportions, they actually make for a more dense espresso puck overall, which creates more resistance, which translates into bigger body and a lot of blend of flavors in your finished shot of espresso. And the things people love about the J tend to be, number one, that taste profile. Number two, the level of adjustability that you get with this ring up here. Each click on the ring translates to about 8 microns of adjustment. That's a very fine degree of adjustment. So if you're trying to get a very small change in how your espresso shot pulls, this grinder 100% delivers. The build quality, also, it's basically all metal aside from this little part up here on the handle, I think. And also the price. The J Ultra comes in at about $200 US, which is definitely a premium price point when it comes to hand grinders, but also is more accessible price-wise than something like a Kinu, even at their bottom end, or a C40. Feels really nice and premium in the hand. It's got this wooden knob on here and the handle folds in just like that. Comes with a little carrying case too. Magnetic catch cup down here. Very nice grinder, just very satisfying to use and great taste when it comes to espresso. So if all that is true, when you go looking online about this kind of stuff, why in the last couple of years has this been getting recommended less and this grinder been getting recommended more? This is the K Ultra from Espresso. This is Espresso's, let's call it their flagship grinder. And more, you see a lot of people using these things, including myself. This is a really nice grinder. It's definitely one of my top recommendations. I'm going to recommend, though, that outside of a few kind of pretty specific cases, you would probably actually like the J Ultra more when it comes to espresso specifically. Here's why. When you go online to these coffee forums, they're often full of very passionate enthusiasts like myself even. And in many cases, the taste profile enjoyed by people like that really tend toward high acidity, a lot of fruit, even floral tasting notes, a lot of separation between flavors, which when a lot of people think of espresso is really not actually what they think about. You know, a lot of times you think about chocolatey, caramelly, nutty flavors when you think about espresso, not this high acidity, fruity stuff. And when it comes to those chocolate blend notes, in my opinion, the J Ultra actually delivers a stronger overall experience. It will blend up the flavors a lot more. Whereas a grinder like the K will produce those individual tasting notes of like raspberry, strawberry, whatever fruit it might be, in a lot more singular and standalone way. The J Ultra will kind of round out that acidity, blend everything together, and give you a nice high body espresso shot, which works fantastically when you're dealing with a more chocolatey or traditional espresso flavor profile. Now, one caveat to that is if you want to use these grinders for both filter and espresso. If you like your espresso shots like this, but when it comes to pour over, you want a crisp, clean, high acidity, high flavor separation cup, you're not going to get that flavor profile if you just go coarser on the J Ultra and grind it up and try and brew a cup of pour over. The K will deliver you a much stronger experience with that. And that's because the J just produces a lot of fines, which are not always good when you're doing drip coffee. So depending on how you want to make coffee, you can kind of end up feeling like you're between a rock and a hard place. And there are a couple ways through that, and we are going to talk about them, but on the whole, the J Ultra really is, in my opinion, a purpose-built tool that really excels at one specific thing. And before we get to the kind of different combinations of grinder or grinders that you can use depending on how you like to brew coffee, or the things that annoy me about the J Ultra, and there are a couple, I want to talk about another place where having a singularly focused tool can be really helpful. And believe it or not, it's actually shaving. For the longest time, I really struggled with my razor. I used a razor that used those cartridge blades that you can get, these thin little flimsy blades that would always seem to collect stuff in them. And I found I never actually really even got that good of a shave with them. Not to mention how much it would irk me every time I would have to go buy a new pack of blades. This is the razor that I use now. It's beautiful, and it's made by Henson Shaving. It's called the AL13. Henson is sponsoring this video, but I can tell you wholeheartedly I love this thing, and there are a couple things that I love about it in particular. First thing, instead of 3 to 5 really flimsy blades, the Henson uses one blade that is firmly and completely supported to sit at the perfect angle and not flex, go over your skin smoothly and closely. It was way easier to use when I got it than I expected, and it makes for a way closer shave. It also feels really nice in the hand too. So if you're not currently happy with your shaving experience and you're looking for something new, highly recommend checking out these things. And you can get 100 free blades with the purchase of a razor using my link below. That's hensonshaving.com/daddygotcoffee. Now, moving back to the J Ultra. If you're kind of wrapping your head around the positioning of these things and thinking, yeah, I think I actually do like that style of espresso shot more. You know, I do maybe milk drinks, and I think that the higher body would cut through the milk better. I'm not into high acidity, high flavor separation. I just want a really nice, cozy shot of espresso. I think this could be the grinder for me. A couple things you're going to want to think about, and definitely can be annoyances or maybe even, let's just say, considerations for some people. First and foremost is that price. You know, as far as premium hand grinders go, $200 is actually kind of in line to low. but you can get entry-level electric espresso grinders for about the same amount. In my opinion, this produces a much nicer shot quality, but it is manual. A couple other things that may or may not matter depending on your preferences or who you talk to or what you value. The catch cup is magnetic, so you can knock it off accidentally. Also, some people find that grounds can kind of cover the magnets over time and reduce their effectiveness. Also, because generally you're grinding for espresso with this, the grounds are very fine and can build up a little bit more easily over time. So you got to clean it, with the brush and all that. When the grinder is sitting on your counter, if it's like this, it can be a little tippy, which is maybe not the best thing, especially if it falls off your counter while the catch cup is full of coffee grounds. The handle can fold in, which makes it a little bit better, but still definitely a consideration. And if there is one most common failure point when it comes to Espresso grinders, it tends to be, from everything I see, this has never happened to an Espresso grinder that I have, but it tends to be with these knobs. They can wear out and break, and then they don't stay on. Doesn't happen to most of them, but when you see people complaining about an Espresso grinder, very often it is to do with the knob. Does feel nice in the hand though. One other thing that can have an impact, especially if you're looking at grind settings that other people are using online, is the zeroing or calibration process. Basically, to do that, you kind of hold the burr and then adjust this little dial in here with the 0 point. Espresso has a procedure that is documented in their manual. But even if you follow that procedure, it's not like there is one guaranteed, 100% based on the procedure that it's at 0. There's a little bit of judgment call in there as to when it actually is at 0. So your 0 may be slightly different than other people who you're seeing online and maybe brewing the same coffee. One other one that isn't happened on this model, but I can say does happen over time with Espresso grinders in this color, is that as you use the grinder, this black finish will start to wear a little bit and will show through a little bit of silver. I've had this grinder, the K Ultra, for several years, and it's not really noticeable from far away, but if you look up close, you can kind of see some wear on some of the especially hard machined corners where that black coating is kind of coming off and you can see the metal underneath. It's minor, but you buy something like this and I would say you want to try and get 5 to 10 years out of it minimum. So definitely something to think about. Wouldn't be as much of an issue on the silver version. If you're into manufacturing background and all that kind of stuff, Espresso is based in Taiwan, which is where they design all their grinders. They're manufactured in China at a factory that Espresso owns. And when I asked them my base questions on manufacturing, they didn't share any third-party labor audits or certifications, that type of thing. They did tell me that their grinders are entirely made in-house under their supervision. I'll leave their full statement on that below. And the last one is maybe more philosophical than practical. Grinding coffee by hand at espresso grind sizes is work. I find grinding up a shot takes between, like 30 seconds to a minute. And as you're cranking, it's not like you think you might not be able to do it, but you do have to give a little bit of effort. And that experience is just not for everybody. Some people want to wake up and they're bleary-eyed, and I get this, I got little kids, and you just kind of want to push a button and have a shot of coffee. You're not always into the manual experience, let's say, when you first wake up, especially if you're going to spend $200. Some people, on the other hand, are really into that. So I think it depends on your philosophy of coffee making and preference. The flip side is it is certainly a lot quieter than an electric coffee grinder. There's no cords, doesn't take up an outlet, and you can put it away pretty easily. So I get it on both sides. I will say with light roasted coffees, if you like the blend and the high fines profile, and you actually do like that blend when it comes to espresso with a light roasted coffee, this grinder absolutely can deliver you great shots in that profile, but it is going to get harder to grind the lighter you go. But if you're in that zone where you really like those super light roasted coffees, as many fruits as you can get on the tasting notes on the bag, the better for you. you want to pick out those individual notes in your espresso. You may very well be happier with the K Ultra, especially if pour over is in the mix of something where you want to go between one and the other. The K Ultra becomes a really strong competitor. So I think if you're wanting everything all in one grinder and the best compromise, the K Ultra really is a strong contender across all the other grinders out there. However, there are other options, and they may be a little bit extra for some people, but that's okay. You may actually want to look at more than one coffee grinder. You may decide to do something like, okay, I think I'm going to get a J Ultra for those thick blended shots of espresso, but I'm also going to pair it with another coffee grinder that is going to give me crystal clear pour over. Something like the Espresso ZP6, or if you want to spend a little bit more money, the Pietro with Pro Brews really delivers on those style of cups. I also recently reviewed the Femobook A4Z, which is an unreal grinder when it comes to filter coffee and kind of straddles the line between electric and manual grinders. It's kind of battery run, but it stands alone and runs on its own. Very nice grinder. And pairing the J with one of those types of grinders can also be a great option. Also, there's the King Grinder K6. Maybe doesn't have the same robust build or quality of user experience, but it does produce a pretty good shot of espresso and works for both espresso and filter coffee. And then you have the Kinu grinders, which also produce fantastic traditional shots of espresso, very much like the J, and are a little bit more expensive and have a ridiculously high build quality. And if you're just not into hand grinding for espresso at all, that is totally fair too. In that case, you can look at grinders like the DF54, the Fellow Opus 2 just came out as well. The Baratza Encore ESP and ESP Pro are also great grinders. And if you're saying, thanks but no thanks, I just don't want to hand grind for espresso, and if that's a little bit of a hit on the cup quality for the same price, I'm okay with that. I would totally get that. I think when you are trying to find one grinder that kind of does everything really well, unless you're willing to spend a lot of money, it in some cases is better to get a purpose-built tool and maybe, 2 different ones. But to answer the question, what is the best hand grinder for espresso? I think the answer really is, and it's not emotionally satisfying, but the answer is, it depends. I think this is a really strong contender, especially considering the price. If you want to throw a little bit more budget in, there's more options out there that also are very good. I think dependent upon style, you can kind of self-select to one grinder or the other. But for me, for a traditional style espresso shot, I very much enjoy the shots that come off the J Ultra. But at this point, I would love to hear what you think. When it comes to your shots, which style camp are you in? Would you consider spending this much on a coffee grinder for espresso that isn't even electric? Is there an option out there that I left out? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and we'll see you on the next one.